Good, af-
Please go ahead, ma'am. We are live now.
Good afternoon to all our participants, our eminent speakers, and we have with us our co-chair, Dr. Sagar Salgaonkar. We also have a special guest with us, Dr. Pradeep Sarmukadam, and we welcome you to the episode 2 of virtual knowledge series on demystifying sustainability and simplifying ESG. This episode 2 will highlight and focus on the concepts of climate change and ESG. To start with, I would like to invite Dr. Sagar Salgaonkar, our co-chair, ASSOCHAM Goa State Development Council, to please provide welcome to our eminent speakers, our special guests, and our participants.
Thank you. On behalf of ASSOCHAM Goa Council, I would like to wish and accord a very warm welcome and wish good afternoon to all our participants, our guests, Dr. Pradeep Sarmukadam, Member Secretary, Goa State Biodiversity Board and Nodal Officer, Goa Climate Change Cell for NAFCC. Our eminent speakers, Dr. Achal Singh and Dr. Abhishek Naresh from GIM. It gives us an immense pleasure to welcome you, Dr. Pradeep ji, to this virtual knowledge series episode 2. Last week, we were quite fortunate and very privileged to launch this series, our episode 1, in presence of Shri Arun Kumar Mishra ji, IAS, who was our special guest. The episode 1 focused on SDGs and provided our participants profuse knowledge and guidance on the universal goals for all the people as far as their individual responsibilities and duties towards protecting the environment. Today, in episode 2, the programs and talks will have on climate change and ESG. Goa has been internationally recognized as one of the biodiversity hotspots of the world. And we are aware that the biodiversity is making many efforts to motivate people to protect the state's biodiversity and conserve natural resources for future generations. Further, the cell is to empower sufficient knowledge to identify the impacts of climate change in Goa and adapt to the new norm. I think what we are presently experiencing all around us, that itself shows what the ways of climate change we are experiencing. We are experiencing some of the hottest summers, some of the driest monsoons, and even I think we are experiencing warm winters. So I think with such climate change that we are experiencing around us, I think the time has come for us to realize exactly which direction we are heading and try to do as far as possible, as soon as possible, course correction, so that everything around us. Sustainability is one of the growth pillars, and we would like to work towards making our state future ready. Therefore, all speakers, we would want you to share your insights and guide us to a sustainable future. So we all look forward to having a very insightful deliberation, interactions, and a very fruitful next 1 to 2 hours with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for welcoming our guests, eminent speakers, special guests, and participants. Now, I would like to introduce Dr. Abhishek Naresh, who will take the lecture on climate change. Dr. Abhishek Naresh is Assistant Professor in Economics, in General Management and Public Policy area at Goa Institute of Management. He is also the member of Social Sensitivity and Actions of GIM. He is currently working on intersection of macroeconomics and climate change. His area of research and expertise lies in microeconomics with a focus on labor and monetary policy in emerging economics. He has worked on projects in ICT in schools, education in IIM Bangalore, design thinking for school children, learning outcomes of denotified and domestic communities, in TISS Mumbai, etc. He holds PhD in economics from Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, MA in economics from IGNU, and BTech in mechanical engineering from NIT Jamshedpur. Prior to his tenure at GIM, he held faculty position at Birla Institute of Technology in Center of Quantitative Economics and Data Science. So we welcome you to this forum and please guide us on the concepts of climate change. And after your address, we would like to put up some questions which has come to me. So please, we are happy to have you here and I request you to please address.
Thanks a lot, Darshana. Thanks for the kind introduction. And I would also like to thank Asocham for providing this opportunity and especially this platform of the knowledge series because as was mentioned to us now by Dr. Pradeep as well, that climate change is something which is affecting us quite deeply. We are experiencing it being in Goa as well as nationally as well. If you see, there's one topic that is affecting people across the ages. So let me begin and let me just start by sharing my slide, presentation. So just let me know, Darshana, when my presentation can you hear it? Can you see it now? Can you see the presentation, Darshana?
We can see the screen, sir.
You
Yeah,
can see.
it is visible.
Okay, sure. That's great. So yes, I mean, I will just talk on the topics that was just told on climate change and sustainability, which I feel is very important in the context and as has been laid down in the introduction part as well. Because if you see, you open the newspapers these days, right? And these are some of the news that pop into your feed. Spring is drastically decreasing. There's a nasty summer ahead for India. There's more heat wave that is happening. And the case of Bengaluru, I mean, that is something which has opened us to the whole reality of what climate change is. And that is why it is very important to first learn about it. So that's how I'll base the presentation, that I'll tell you the basics of it, and then we'll see what can we do as citizens, as well as what are the larger forces at play in this domain, right? So just talking about sustainability first, because climate change and the environmental aspect become part of it. So we have something which we always call as the triple P, the three Ps. So one is what we call as planet, one is the people, and is the profit. So it's all an intermix of three that defines sustainability. So sustainability rests on these three pillars. Now, out of this, obviously we want a pursuit of all, because finally we are there for the economic development part of it, right? So we want a pursuit of economic development. In the same time, we want protection and performance, but social equity, inclusion, and justice also has to be a key focus in it. Now, in this the setup, what we find that environmental protection, especially, and the performance in that front has been one of the main focus topics, if you see, right? That even I remember from my days of schooling back in 90s, the ozone layer depletion was a huge thing which was discussed. If you take the sciences course starting from class third, we always were subject to what is ozone layer depletion, what can we do in order to prevent it, the chlorofluorocarbons which comes in refrigerators. So environmental protection and the conservation of it has been one of the key themes. And if you see across the financing and the investment part of it, be it the steel plants, and that has gained the majority focus. Now, why? So that the fact I stated, but the why of it, why environmental sustainability gathers so much of attention? So for that, let me give you an illustration. So this is a satellite image, right? This is the time of November 2023 when the Parali burning, especially in the northern part of India, takes place. Now you can see all the Parali burning that is happening is mostly in the areas of Punjab and Haryana. But where did we hear the maximum news coming from? Delhi NCR, which was kilometers away, right? Near Delhi NCR, I don't see a lot of Parali burning happening. But what is happening far away in Punjab and places of Haryana is affecting people in Delhi NCR. And not only Delhi NCR, People all across, people in Punjab are suffering definitely because the Parali burning is taking place. People of Haryana are suffering. People of Delhi are suffering. So the point here is that environmental concerns have a huge negative externality, right? What happens kilometers away affects me. If in Goa we are producing a lot of pollution, then it will affect not only India but the entire world. So this is the important point, that why environmental sustainability is gathering so much of attention, right? It is just like me smoking, right? I'm affecting myself, but the people in the room are also getting affected. So the negative externality from environmental sustainability is the reason why it is gathering so much of attention. Even if you take what is happening in the glaciers, right, in the Himalayas are called the third pole, and we basically are getting a lot of perennial rivers start from Himalaya. And this is the Gepang Ghat Glacier. So this image is from ISRO. They have tracked it from 1989 till 2022, how the glacier has contracted. And if you see, the most interesting aspect of it is from 2010 till 2022, last 12 years, the contraction has been the maximum, right? So glaciers provide us water. So if the glaciers dry up, where are we going to get our water resources from? So what is happening in the Himalayas is affecting us. So this is the reason why climate change has to be looked at with a much deeper lens, and that is why it requires much more attention. So before that, I mean, just to get to what is climate change, I want to just explain what is the whole process of greenhouse gases, global warming, so that we can understand the why of it. When we understand the why of it, then we can get a remedy, right? Take, for instance, we go to a doctor, right? Until this doctor knows why my stomach is aching, he can't provide me with a remedy, right? So what causes climate change? So it is pretty intuitive and very simple. So first of all, what happens? The sun provides us with the heat. The heat comes to our atmosphere, and in the atmosphere, the heat is basically absorbed by Earth. And in the atmosphere, you have gases like carbon dioxide, methane, water vapor, and these are called greenhouse gases, right? So just let's keep this thought that these three are right now the greenhouse gases which are in the atmosphere. The heat from the sun has come in, and the Earth has absorbed the heat. Now, once Earth has absorbed the heat, what happens is Earth starts radiating back the heat, right? This is what happens. Now, here, these gases basically, the carbon dioxide, methane, and the water vapor, absorb the heat and trap it in the atmosphere. And this actually keeps our Earth warm. Now, that's not a bad thing, right? We need the warmth on our Earth. Otherwise, it's going to be pretty cold out there. We can't survive. So that is what happens, and this is how the Earth gets warm. But the problem is that if you have more carbon dioxide, more methane, then in that case, the more heat is getting trapped, right? So a very simple analogy is that suppose I am the heat, right? I open the door, I walk into the room. That's the atmosphere and the earth inside it. Carbon dioxide are like the chain which hold me inside the room. I walk in, I get held. The more chains there are, the more people like me, the heat that is walking into the room, the more it gets getting trapped, right? So the hotter it gets. Now, this is the entire problem which is happening, and this is what is driving climate change, right? The earth is getting hotter because our activities are fueling more of these greenhouse gases to be released, right? There has to be a balance. We need to strike the balance into the atmosphere, right? uh, okay, Darshana, just one point. Are my slides changing?
So your slide is on the first. It's not
Okay,
changing.
just 1 second, 1 second.
Yeah.
um,
So now the slide number 9 is visible.
okay, just a second. Is it fine now?
Yes, sir. Now
Okay,
it's
so now you can see the slides changing.
yes, sir. So I think you should
Okay.
address the second slide and then we can just see
uh,
the.
Let me start from here.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's great. So basically, I'll just go through the slides. I didn't know, I mean, that the slides aren't changing. I just thought I'll just check it. And so basically, what I started off with is that the news that we are hearing of late, especially with the temperatures that are rising and the water scarcity that we saw in the case of just a second. Yeah, in the case of Bangalore, right? And then I was discussing the sustainability approach. So when we say that we want to have a sustainable life, then basically what we want is that the planet, which is the environmental aspect of it, I should be able to preserve it. There should be social inclusion. And finally, the profits or the economic development is important. So sustainability is actually an interaction of the three. It is the platform which is residing on all these three pillars. So this was the point that I was trying to make. And we want all these three to go on together, right? We want the economic prosperity, the environmental quality, the social equity, all these things to be going on together. But what you will see and what you'll observe that since the last 3-4 decades, environmental quality basically gathers the maximum attention, right? Now, in this, I was sharing this brief story that yes, when in the 90s, the ozone layer depletion was a huge issue. The students were taught about it. We were curious what was happening, right? Even the environmental pollution, the various legislations that came in, the investments that were driven in, and the research and development which companies did in order to reduce the pollution. So that is why environmental aspect concern drove the maximum attention. And the reason for it was that it has a maximum externality. So the example that I was trying to give, so this was the thing which I was trying to mention. If you see, this is the satellite view of the farm fire, the Parali burning, which was happening in the month of November 23, right? So you can see Delhi NCR is pretty far away from Punjab and Haryana, where actually the Parali burning was taking place, right? Now, people in Delhi got affected. People in Punjab and Haryana definitely getting affected. So the negative externalities are pretty high if you consider from the environmental concerns. Pollution which is being caused in Goa. Suppose I have a factory in Goa produce a lot of gases and pollution all around and dump it maybe in the sea or in the air. Then it affects not only people in Goa, it affects people in India and all throughout globally it is affecting people. So this is the reason why when you have a huge negative externality, then environmental sustainability gathers so much of attention, right? Now the other image, I think now Darshana, you can see the image.
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So this is the image which I'm actually trying to share. So basically, if you see, this is the ISRO satellite imagery of Gepang Ghat Glacier in Himachal Pradesh. So this is situated in the Himalayas. In the Himalayas, basically, which are called the third pole, we have a lot of glaciers. And if you see right from 1989 to 22, you can see from the satellite image what is the contraction in the glacier, right? And especially if you compare 2010 to 2022, these two panels, then you will see how fast the glacier has contracted. Now, this is just the last 12 years that we are looking at. Himalayas is the home to all the fresh water that we have, right? Non-salinated water that exists. So these are some of the striking facts that are available there, which shows that over the last 12 years, 15 years, what has been the impact of climate change and how it affects us. If the glaciers dry up, from where will we get water, right? So these are the reasons why, because the high negative externality, you see that there's the environmental sustainability is gathering so much of attention. And for this, actually, I was trying to say that we need to understand the why of climate change, why climate change happens, what is the mechanism behind it. And for it, it's very simple, something which we are taught in science. So sun, as I was showing here, that sun is the source of all our energy, especially heat, right? So from sun, the heat energy comes, and in our atmosphere, we have certain gases. These gases are like carbon dioxide, methane, and water vapor. Now, when the heat energy comes, the earth absorbs it, right? So it is similar to like me walking into a room. And in the room, these gases are basically like the chains which bind me up. So this was the point I was trying to make, that when the earth radiates back the heat, it gives back the heat which it has absorbed. Then what happens is these gases absorb the heat and then they don't allow the heat to escape the atmosphere, right? If that is the case, if I keep on increasing these gases, then it leads me to a situation where more and more heat is trapped in the Earth's atmosphere. We are getting hotter, right? As more people or heat is walking through the room, getting shackled, the room is getting hotter. So similar sort of a thing is happening. And this is basically what is driving climate change, right? This is why the earth is becoming hotter, because by our activities, the carbon dioxide which is being released, the methane which is being released, is causing the earth to become hotter and hotter. Are these the only gases which contribute to it? The answer is no. You have nitrous oxide, HFC, which are hydrofluorocarbons, sulfur hexafluoride, nitrogen trifluoride. So there are a list of greenhouse gases which are responsible in order to trap the heat. Now, if all our processes are producing these many gases, there are so many more chains which are binding it up. It is not allowing us to be the heat to escape, and earth is getting hotter and hotter and hotter. And all these activities are basically leading to climate change. You see in this nitrous oxide, methane, carbon dioxide, all producing greenhouse gases, trapping the heat, making our earth becoming hotter. And I say methane because uh, uh, some countries have gone to that extreme step in order to curb methane, right? So if you take the case of New Zealand, Canada, and even countries in the Europe, they have actually proposed a burp tax, if you may call, which is that livestock produce a lot of methane. So hence you should tax them, right? There's a huge controversy around it, but yes, countries have gone to very extreme steps as well in order to curb the menace of climate change and especially the greenhouse gases that is being released, right? Now, by now, you have understood, I think, conceptually how the greenhouse gases are released, they're trapped in the atmosphere, and what leads to a climate change, right? Now, I'll just give you 10 quick seconds and just think the space around you, right? Which is one item, a good that you use on a daily basis, which you feel causes a detrimental impact on on the environment, especially with respect to the release of greenhouse gases and then causing climate change. Just think about it for 10 seconds. And now, especially if I'm taking this in the class, then what people usually come up with is like, is my gas stove, is my mobile, it's my laptop, maybe it's my microwave or the car I'm driving around. But even the small things will shock you, right? So now you'll be like, why is the faculty showing me a shoe, right? What has shoe got to do with it? I get it. It's must be manufactured at some place and then it releases greenhouse gases during the process of manufacturing, right? But actually, the air shoes that you buy, so Nike was using something, a greenhouse gas called sulfur hexafluoride for making air shoes. So these basically make your shoes bouncy. And 1 kg of this gas is equivalent to 22,800 kgs of CO2. So now you can understand even how small things affect us. And this is equivalent to driving five cars for a year. And just wait for the most, I mean, I won't call it interesting, but most dangerous aspect of this. It is so stable chemical that it stays for 3,200 years. Now, a shoe that you bought just because it gives you that nice feel, you can run around, it can have this much detrimental impact on the environment and the earth. Now, that is why we need to be very mindful when we are purchasing. Even the eye of it is very important. What goods that I buy that can lead to it, right? And mind you, sulfur hexafluoride, Nike discontinued with it. They now fill nitrogen in it because nitrogen is a inert gas, is a stable gas. It goes out and it does not cause your greenhouse effects and other things. But sulfur hexafluoride is still used, especially for high voltage insulators in the electrical industry, right? So yes, these are certain problems that are associated, and how we need to be very mindful of our actions, and especially the goods and the items that we are using. So this is what our carbon footprint is, right? So all the total amount of greenhouse gases that are generated by our actions. Everything that we do on a day-to-day basis, how much of greenhouse gas it is removing, and that is what is carbon footprint. So technically, what I say is, it means that we need to be mindful of our carbon footprint. And now I think I must have convinced you that climate change is for real and how our actions are tied up to the entire issue of climate change. Now, I'll just pinpoint some facts that are there. So, climate change, if you see, it starts from the 1800s till 2016, you will see this is the temperature anomaly that is happening. And around the summers, you will see now the temperature anomaly has risen, right, by 2 degrees, the mean temperature. So, this is the amount of impact that climate change is causing. Why do we say that summers are getting hotter? Even in Goa, or if you step outside in Delhi or any other place in India. This is because the average temperatures have gone up. Even if you see the glacier melting example that I gave you, how it impacts us. Now, Antarctica, the glaciers are melting. This is for Mumbai. So, this is the sea level changes that will happen in Mumbai. This is the prediction for it over the next 100, 150 years. Just take the end of this century, right? The average rise in sea level changes is predicted at somewhere around zero point 0.6 meters. Now, you may say 0.6 meter is too small a quantity, but this actually means that in the city of Mumbai, it will lead to the area getting drowned in water for all the portions which are red marked here, right? And these are the places where urbanization is taking place. Even the mainland Mumbai, if you see, Navi Mumbai and all these places, Thane, all are getting affected if the sea level rises. Now, this is the profound impact that climate change has in our day-to-day life. If you have an industry based out of there, it's a problem. If you have a house based out of there, it's a problem. And it's all being caused by our actions, right? That is why we need to be very mindful of what steps we can take in order to do this, right? And it's not that, I mean, the steps aren't out there. If you see, the vision has already been laid. So our Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji gave this vision of lifestyle for environment. And this contains all the necessary strategies that we need in order to curb the menace of climate change. And these strategies are pretty straightforward. It's a three-pronged strategy, and basically it involves a change in demand, a change in supply, and a change in policy aspect. Now, any economics professor, if you talk to, will always talk about the demand and supply, right? So I had to bring this aspect in. But yeah, so demand is basically the I aspect of it. What changes I can make to myself in order to reduce my carbon footprint. The supply is what businesses can do, industries can do in order to reduce their carbon footprint, and the policy measure which the policy government brings in order to tackle the problem of climate change. So as far as our is concerned, the demand side of it, we must be very careful in order to the kind of items we are using in our day-to-day life, and we should not take it for granted, right? We must know that these cause a significant amount of greenhouse gas that is being produced, and we should be mindful of their usage. For instance, food, if you drink orange juice, if you run a car, even the toothbrush that is made out of plastic, water, the shower that you're using every day, the clocks uses battery. So you should be very mindful of it. And in the chat later towards the end of the presentation, I'll share a link and you can actually fill in all the details of your day-to-day activity and get to know how much of a carbon footprint are you creating. Right now, this is a very interesting activity because it will tell you very deep insights of how much all these carbon gases is being released from your day-to-day activity. In India, if you say, then 2 tons is the per capita greenhouse gas emission that is taking place, which is very less than the global average. Yes, I agree with that fact. It's 6 tons, which is the global average. India is still less, around 2. But still, 2 tons is also a large quantity, right? And we need to be mindful of it because a country which has a very high population needs to understand that the resources are constrained, right? Will feel that pressure. So we need to be mindful of these activities. The second is the supply side of it. So on the supply end of it, a lot of work has been done. Where companies have been proactive, the government has been proactive, and in this, people have defined metrics in order to tell how much of emissions are being generated. So these are popularly called the scope emissions, which is scope 1, scope 2, and the scope 3. Now, uh, It's very easy. It's very easy. So suppose I'm a shoe manufacturer. What happens is I have a plant. I produce shoe in it. All the greenhouse gases that are being produced because of the shoe production comes under the scope 1 emission, right? Now, for running my plant, I need electricity. So what I'll do is I'll go to a power plant, buy electricity. Power plant maybe uses coal. So that is the scope 2 emission. How much pollution is the power plant doing in order to produce the electricity? And lastly, we have some allied activities as a business. So I can have business travel. What happens to the sold products? So what happens to the shoes after it has been thrown in the dumpster and used by the people? So that comes under scope 3. So there are defined metrics when we come to this, and these metrics help us and provide a direction to the industries on what steps we should take. So for a factory levels for reducing scope 1 emission, what I'll do is I'll implement certain technology in my factory that produces lesser pollution, right? To take the case of Nike, it replaced that dangerous gas with nitrogen, right? So that is scope 1 emission reduction. On a scope 2 front, what I can do is I can produce electricity by renewable sources. So suppose I shift to solar, if I shift to wind, then my scope 2 emissions come down. And in scope 3, if I'm able to recycle my shoes, then it will help me to bring down the scope 3 emission. So a lot of work has been done on the business end, and even with the ESG, which Professor Achal will talk about, the BRSR, which has come, Business Responsibility and Sustainability Reporting of SEBI, which started in 21 and then got implemented in 23. Then under BRSR, one of the important pillar is the environmental aspect. And in this, companies have to show what steps they have taken. And now with coming up of BRSR 400, so BRSR is only for top 1,000 listed firms. BRSR 400 is just for the top 100 firms. They have to show what actionable decisions they have done, right? So that's on the supply side of it. And it's very important in the case of India because if you see the sector-wise greenhouse gas emission, power, agriculture, manufacturing, transportation, and waste produces about 85% of the greenhouse gas emissions in India, right? So that is why even from a supply side, it's very important for the industries to incorporate newer technologies in order to help reduce the greenhouse gas emission. And lastly is the policy. So for the policy, again, in COP26, India laid down something which was called Panchamrit. So Panchamrit is a Sanskrit word which basically means the 5 nectars. And in that 5 basic important points were given. So India committed that the non-fossil energy capacity will be 500 gigawatts by 2030 and it will meet 50% of its energy requirements till 2030 by with renewable energy. It will also take actions to reduce projected carbon emissions by 1 billion tons, so by 2030. Fourthly, it said that it will reduce carbon intensity of economy by 45%. So carbon intensity is basically if I produce a certain amount of energy, then how much is the carbon dioxide that you are releasing into the atmosphere. So India pledged to that. And lastly is to achieve net zero by 2070. I won't get into the details, but India has brought many legislations, even from a policy perspective. A lot of schemes have been initiated in that direction, and a lot of these targets will be complete by 2030. For many steps or actions are being taken, and by 2070, India looks at least on the track that it may achieve net zero. Now, that is a very big thing coming from world's largest democracy and also country which has the maximum population, right? So, from a policy perspective, yes, these are the 5 points or the key pillars on which India is hinging its entire focus. Now, lastly, I mean, I'll just conclude with what is the way forward because we have seen till now what the problem of climate change is, how it has been caused, and what is the three-pronged strategy in order to address it. Right, we took a look at a lot of hard facts as well, starting from satellite imageries and coming to the data regarding the manufacturing and the supply aspect is concerned. Now, for the way forward, I personally feel and I'm of the opinion that sustainability is the North Star and digital solutions are the enabler. Why? Because under digital solutions, India has shown the potential to the world what it is capable of. See, in the digital payments has been a huge success in India. Foreign countries are trying to mimic and understand it, right? So India has a huge potential as far as the digital solutions is concerned. Even if you take the COVID certificates, we had an app, the QR was available, you can scan it and do it. Even developed countries didn't have that. In providing digital solutions, especially for the point of view of environmental sustainability, India has huge potential. And what this will do, this will help you to reduce the leakages and inefficiencies in the system. If from a data analysis, I know that what is the energy requirement in different parts of the day, that will enable me to produce electricity much more efficiently. Where the electricity the loss is happening, if I get to know that from the analysis of the data, I can reduce it. Right. If I know what the traffic patterns are, I can better manage my roads, build new roads in order to reduce the consumption. So this is the power of data analytics. And then technologies, the AI, ML, IoT, even the blockchains that you hear, this is what it is capable of delivering. And then this will provide a platform in order to lead the whole vision of sustainability. So on this positive and optimistic note, I'll just like to say thank you to Azocham for providing me this platform. And as Darshana mentioned, if there are any questions, then I'll be happy to take.
Thank you, sir, for your detailed explanation. I think I also did not know certain points which I got clarity now. We thank you for this special lecture and knowledge, power packed information. So there were certain questions which came to me while I was sharing the registration link. I would like to put up few questions, sir, now. The questions are very general. Like the first question was, what is the biggest problem of climate change in state of Goa? I think as a general, so you can just guide on this. I think that means what are the recent problems of climate change we are facing in our country or the state of Goa? Any analysis you have, you can just share.
So even if you take the case of Goa, the first problem that you will see is with the rising temperatures, right? If you have seen the climate patterns of Goa, as was being mentioned in the introduction as well, the summers are becoming hotter. In the winters, you don't find it. Now that is a problem, because if suppose I am working out of here, maybe if I'm a migrant labor or even a native worker, right? That puts extra pressure on me in terms of resources to provide for that comfort of living. That is point one. The second point, especially pertaining to Goa, is the fishery sector, right? A lot of population, especially the coastal population, is dependent on fisheries, right? And if the temperature changes, so especially if the sea temperatures change, then the fishing that you find near the coast or even outskirts of the coast, that pattern changes. Even the fish breeding changes. So there as well, a lot of problem lies. And if again, the third point is that if you take the example which I discussed of Mumbai, the places will be inundated by the end of this century, right? Now that is again an issue, a problem that you will face in case of Goa as well as as the sea levels rise. So these are three key points, I think, which Goa especially, which will happen because of climate change.
So is it because it's like if you say take the regions wide, is it like the state of Goa, whatever we are affected with, the same is suffered by the other states adjacent because we are in the western region, something like that?
Yes,
Can
so take the case of Maharashtra. We are on the coastline, right? So basically, the issues that are happening, especially in terms of Maharashtra coastline, the Karnataka coastline, Goa, are similar. But again, change the geography, then you will have a different issue itself. Take the case of glacier that I was talking about. So if you take the example of the glacial outburst which happened in Uttarakhand. Now, when the glaciers melt, so if I can just share the screen, this is a very nice, interesting infographics that okay. So my screen is visible now.
yes.
Okay. So what happens when the glaciers melt, right? So when the glaciers melt, you can see the lake size is increasing, and this is the lake size which is in 2022. And then if the glacial lake outburst happens, then all the people living in the vicinity will be affected, right? In people in the downstream of it. So here the problems are quite different. How do you tackle climate change in the Himalayas? A lot of vegetation change is happening in Himalayas. So trees that were earlier growing at 10,000 feet, because suppose the temperature there was 10 degrees Celsius, now are being found at 20,000 feet, because now the temperature at 20,000 feet is 10 degrees Celsius. They are not suitable now to be grown at 10 degrees Celsius, right? So these are again geography wise you will have to tackle, and that is why different ministries will have to lay out different plans, right? So suppose in India you have a mission on Himalayan regions, so that will tackle a very specific issue of Himalayan regions and what are the climate change problems that are there. You have NIO in Goa, so from NIO you get the boil level data of what is the sea level changes that is happening because of it. Even the sonar data will reveal you the fishing population and what changes have been to it. So yes, every region requires a different solution.
So another questions which popped up is like we have a lot of educational institution. So what is the role of education in controlling these effects of climate change? What the institution must do apart from promoting education? What else measures they can do within their campus?
So, apart from promoting education, if you see, you must be very mindful of the kind of pedagogy or the kind of exposure that you are giving to students in order to understand the extent of the problem, right? So experiential learning is very important for them. Like if you walk into a class and say that average temperature went up by 2 degrees Celsius, so this is what kind of questions you will face. Oh, it's 2 degrees Celsius, I'll keep the AC now at 22. Earlier it was at 24. So they need to understand what that average of 2-degree rise should be there. So experiential learning is very important when it comes to understanding sustainability. And I feel sustainability should become an important aspect as far as the teaching and the pedagogy curriculum is concerned, right? Like here in GIM, we have a separate course, sustainability and society, what it's called, to understand what's the impact of sustainability when you take on all these simulations. And it's not that we are disconnecting businesses from it. Right. Businesses need to be profitable. If you remember the slide that I showed, that profit is a very important aspect of it. So businesses, what they have to do is to understand that sustainability is not a cost, but sustainability is an investment which will lead you to profits in the longer run. This mindset shift, if it happens and people are able to understand, and this is what the business managers and the leaders that education institutions are producing will do, and that is from a management perspective. Technological colleges need to work on the research and development aspect of it, right? Do you need electrostatic precipitators? A lot of work is being done on the cloud front, right? Even how do you have efficient cloud technologies, even servers, the cloud servers, how we can have efficient cloud servers which don't produce a lot of heat or don't consume a lot of energy. So these kind of things can happen technological aspect as well, and from a management or that perspective.
Yes, sir. And there were one question, I think you already covered it in your presentation. And I think what are the few things we are witnessing because of climate change? I think you have given a very good slides with pictures which we have already understood the meaning. So I thank you, sir, for this, and this was much needed for all the participants because the nowadays the concept and the topic of climate change is everywhere, but we need to understand what exactly the climate change is and how we can help them to control. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir, for your perspectives, for sharing and guiding us on this subject. Now I would like to invite our special guest, Dr. Pradeep Sir Mukadam. Sir is the member secretary of Goa State Biodiversity Board, and he is the nodal officer of Goa Climate Change Cell, Government of Goa. Sir is the nodal officer state level steering committee for climate change. It is NAFCC, member of Goa State Environment Pollution Council. He is the board of director of GSWMC, member of state board for wildlife, member SGP 07. He is the member of Goa State Council for Science and Technology, India Program, Regional Advisory Group, NABARD Goa, member State Technical Advisory on Waste Management for GSUDA, that is Goa State Urban Development Agency. So we welcome you, and we are very honored to have the presence of Pradeep Sir Mukadam. So
Thank you.
we
Thank
are
you.
very happy that you have joined in spite of your busy schedule, and we need your guidance and we need to know your perspectives on this subject, and that is why we have invited you as a special guest. We are very happy to have you today. We request you to please address to all the audience.
Thank you. Thank you, Darshana. Thank you very much. Indeed, it is pleasure to join all of you. Excellent presentation by Abhishek ji. I think you have well covered the things. A few things I would like to state about that, and then we will go to the topic of the day. Being the nodal officer for climate change, I would like to say that there is a state action plan on climate change, which is available for the state of Goa, which has been done. And in addition, it is in line with National Climate Action Plan. We have a state action plan which is for next 10 years. And if you look at the climate issue, it has actually become visible from 1900. We did the analysis of past 100 years, we projected it for next 100 years to see exactly what we have to do. It is completely in line with industrial era that we find that the climate issue has started, because we said that industries are temples of modern civilization. So while we set up these modern temples of industries, we have never thought of environment and sustainability. And we have reached a situation where all the problems have reached to such a level that you have to either stop something, maybe mitigate single-use plastic, or stop the plastic industry. It was one demand or one argument made. Why do you keep them? But that does not solve the problem. Stopping some industries does not solve the problem. May it be a livestock, which is one of the reason for carbon emissions, but there are great success story. If you look at how Konkan area has built thousands of gobar gas, biogas based, and the methane has been converted into again fuel. And they had a slogan of Dhura Mukta Gram, that means smoke free villages. And that was such a revolution that thousands of biogas units were made. So that all that cow dung, which would have otherwise emitted methane, has gone. But if you look at the open composting, which is happening for almost 95% of the waste in India, that is oozing out with the methane. And I think we have to prioritize our problems, because when you start prioritizing the problems, you will come to know that energy or coal based energy, fossil fuel based uh, energy is the main cause of our climate change issue, because we have thousands of such units operating all over the world. If you look at the vehicular emission, which contributes to almost 20% of the problem, 85% of air pollution comes from vehicular, but 20% of the global health issues are connected with the vehicular traffic. Now, how can we improve our public transport system? Another thing I would like to state is, when we talk about only solar energy, one side we are doing solar panels, other side we are doing lithium mining, which is such a dangerous thing for environment. So where are we leading? Are we actually starting to think about conservation of energy? It is like you save petrol, you you almost create petrol. Like that, if you save energy, that means you can do a lot. So the problem, as you rightly said, 1.5 degree was the target of the whole world that we had set up, and we have already reached 1.1 degree. So are we going to contain our temperature rise within 1.5, or we are going to exceed 2 degrees? Because exceeding 2 degrees would be a disastrous. But if you look at the state of Goa, I would like to conclude on climate change in a very short way, that if you look at the state of Goa, last 10 years we were the hottest. That means, being the smallest, and we are not contributing to the overall climate issue, but we are suffering. Same thing is happening, same thing is going to happen to the world. Those who uh, set up huge industries are going to cause pollution if they are irresponsible, and that is why we talk about demystifying sustainability and simplifying ESG. Now, when we talk about ESG, that is environmental social governance. Here is what we have to include: climate change. We have to include all sorts of pollutions that as an industry we can create, and sometimes over period of time it is a big thing. Now why only industry? I also personally think sometimes that what about the war situations? When there is one war, there are so many emissions. The two countries are burning missiles. One missile, maybe few crores, they are burning in air. We talk about the, you know, the fireworks that we do during Diwali and during some celebrations, and there are a lot of talks about it. What about the fireworks that happened during the war? Because of few mad people in the classroom, the whole classroom gets punished. Same thing happens in the world today. There are few countries which have different agenda. They don't mind killing the entire populations, but look at the global impact of war on climate change. And I think that will be equivalent to several hundreds of industries. So, but because industry is an organized sector, because we are expecting industries to function within the compound walls and we expect them to have the compliance. And that is why I think when we talk about environmental social governance, it talks about two things. One is the environmental, occupational health and safety management within the factory. This is one part. And second, the CSR means working with the societies, working with the stakeholders, how all this has been combined. And somewhere in 2004 onwards, this term of ESG started coming into use, basically because it was part of one UN report. And that's why ESG, that is environmental social governance, which was previously only referred to as EHS department as a separate department and CSR department as a separate department. Now, many corporates have combined them together, and in a very holistic way, they look at environmental social governance. And I think there is a big opportunity for the entire private sector. And I should congratulate SOCHAM for holding this uh, knowledge series, because it is very important that the knowledge that is created through research should be dissipated to all the stakeholders, should be simplified, and we should discuss more about the problem solving issues. How can we bring about the solutions? We can always flag the problems. If I start talking about the problems for next 10 minutes, somebody will feel like committing suicide, but that's not the objective. The objective is, can we find some solutions? Because we all need air condition, we all need comforts, we all need all the best things on the world to come our platter, and for that we can afford to spend money. So in this situation, when we spend money, maybe we purchase something for 300 rupees, it is purchased from some tribal at 3 rupees, and then we do not know. So if you connect yourself with the person who is producer, if you eliminate or reduce the number of brokers, that is a very big contribution you are going to make, because then there won't be unethical excess destruction, because then people will get a decent margin. So there are many aspects that are connected with climate change, whether it is gender equity, whether it is occupational health and climate change, whether it is impact of climate change on the business as a whole, shifting climates, extreme rainfall events, all these things are creating a biggest challenge to the environmental social governance. When in the industry you are in charge of ESG, you will have the first challenge that you will have the least budget available. And in that least budget, you are expected to take care of entire environment. So today I called my climate change cell team and I asked them, look, there is a advisory that there is going to be a temperature rise. So what are you going to do? They said, sir, what we can do from here. That means climate change is something that you cannot expect that government will do something, or maybe IMD will do something, or maybe somebody will do something and we will have no climate change. It is not possible. Climate change is going to happen. We are all going to be victims. Everybody is traveling on the path of destruction. It is to see that who is near the coast will get first wiped out, or who is near the vulnerable area will get first impacted, then the others. But it has been a common behavior that till the fire doesn't reach us, till it doesn't touch us, we generally don't think about it. We say somebody will come and take care. So I think a behavioral based approach is an extremely important. Talking about demystifying sustainability. Sustainability has to be incorporated in planning level itself. We cannot feel that, some EHS officer is appointed, you should ensure the sustainability. No, you have to have the whole process in such a way that you include the sustainability, not only sustainability of environment, but the sustainability of your business is also associated with the sustainability of environment. Na rahega baas, na bajegi basuri, they always say. So you have to always look at a bigger picture. A, a, a greater holistic approach is required, and only profitability for a short term need not be looked at, because now we are talking about sustainable development. That means, see, for next 50 years, next 100 years, at least next 10, 15 years, what is the objective of your business? Are you really going to only look at the profits, and then 1 year some externality comes, and then you spend all the profits, and then you are in trouble? So if you incorporate the sustainability right into your planning, I think that should be the approach. Coming to the environmental social governance, I would like to state 2, 3 things and then I will stop. One is occupational health, safety, and environment management within the factory of the workplace is not only ESG. All these sectors will effectively function if your external setup of your factory is equally eco-friendly. For example, if we are today, if you are in a concrete jungle around Pune, say in Kothurud area, where there are mountains which do not have trees, whereas there is concrete roads, and you are located, then your air condition will spend lot of energy in cooling the structure before cooling you. So much electricity will be lost. So that is the role that the plantations around your home, having kitchen gardens, small initiatives. How can you make your spaces green? How can you make your industries green? And that too by not only planting the palm trees. This is another problem. Everybody wants instant greening. So you bring palm trees which don't require water, and you keep them around so that everything looks green. But is it actually green? Because the tree that doesn't take water, is it a endemic? Is it a local native species? Does it give any fruit to any bird? So nobody will come. No bird. Na panthi ko chhaya, na pyase ko pani. So
I think you are just suffering some network congestion. Yeah.
water. Yeah, you can hear me, Darshana?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Am I audible? Okay, okay.
Yes, sir,
So
you're.
last 2 points. One is protect the ecological setup within your factory, and then you will find that the energy required, the management interventions required to ensure the sustainable uh, social governance, working with the communities around, rather than giving money, if you can give them what is actually desired.
Yeah, so I think, sir, you are suffering from little network congestion from your
Now I
end.
think I'm clear. So
Yeah.
these are few suggestions I would like to make. Occupational health, safety, safety of humans, safety of machinery. This is the objective, but safety of environmental uh, uh, setup around you. See that there is no off-site emergency which will really destroy flora fauna. So I think these are some of the ethical responsibilities we should own when it comes to environmental social governance. And we talk about social governance. It means actually there is a government which is going to do governance. How can we complement? How can we add more actions? How, as an industry, we can be more complementary, and we can set up small success stories, good examples, create success stories, small success stories with the communities, which can guide the others to work together. That is uh, something that I would like to share. I'm thankful to Darshana and the entire team of SOCHM for inviting me. And that's it from my side. Thank you.
So thank you. Your address has always been like a guidance, and your inputs will always have higher values. And we are very grateful to you for your presence. In spite of your busy schedule, you have managed to join us. And we thank you, sir, on behalf of SHM. And this web virtual knowledge series we had intentionally formulated in association with GIM CASA. Why? Because we identified the need of every citizens of Goa, maybe stakeholders or any industry perspectives, educators, students, or any laymen. They need this kind of knowledge when it comes to climate change, ESG, because lot people are talking very much about sustainability, but they do not understand what are the causes and how we need to take care of everything. So once again, sir, we are thankful for your presence. And now it's a time to hear about ESG, where Dr. Achal
Thank
Singh,
you.
ma'am. Yes, sir. Dr. Achal Singh, ma'am, professor from GIM and member of CASA, Center for Social Sensitivity and Action. Ma'am is an assistant professor for Goa Institute of Management. She is PhD from Indian Institute of Management, Nirma University, Ahmedabad. She holds a bachelor and master degree from National PG College, Lucknow. Previously, she has taught at Jaipuria School of Business, Ghaziabad. Her research work broadly in the areas of ESG, disclosure, sustainability reporting, CSR practices, their impact on the firm performance of organization. She has published research articles in journals of national and international repute and has presented papers in numerous conferences. Her teaching interest includes financial management, financial and management accounting, sustainability, reporting, business ethics, and corporate governance. We welcome you, ma'am. We request you to please or guide us and address on the very important subject when it comes to industry perspectives or otherwise on ESG. Ma'am, please requesting you to please address.
Thank you so much, Darshana ji, for the kind introduction that I got. And thank you so much, Asojam, for providing me the opportunity to talk about ESG with our members here. So, before I begin with the presentation, ESG is the most talked about thing these days, specifically since the BRSR mandate came into place and the companies are now mandatory, they have to give out their BRSR reports annually, right? So a lot of talk, a lot of discussions are happening both not only in the corporate sector but in the academic world as well as to how do we go about measuring the sustainability performance of the companies, what are the different frameworks or matrices that we as either educational institutions or companies can use in order to measure out and quantify our ESG performances or the sustainability performances. So just give me a second and I'll share my screen. Is this visible on the full
Yes,
screen
ma'am.
mode?
Yes, yes, yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you so much. So, ESG is comparatively, if we talk about sustainable development, if we talk about CSR, and if we talk about any other thing related to sustainability reporting, ESG is comparatively a very new concept. The talks related to sustainable development and what has been the corporate sector's contribution towards achieving the sustainable development goals has been a point of discussion and debate since a very long time. So, beginning with what do we actually understand by sustainable development? I understand that most of you might already be well aware of sustainable development and how do we actually go about defining sustainable development, because as my colleague Professor Naresh pointed out, this is something that we have been studying since class third and fourth in our school. What is sustainable development? We need to reduce pollution, we need to reduce emissions. But again, applying the concept of sustainable development from the corporate perspective is a very different story altogether, right? So sustainable development basically means that we have I'm sorry, that we have some needs as the current generation which is here residing on land. In order to fulfill those needs, we obviously need to utilize whatever resources are there available to us. Those could be the man-made resources as well as the natural resources. The only thing, when the society or the community at large is progressing together towards the future, one thing that we as a community that we need to make sure is that we should not compromise or we should not overutilize the resources which are available for our disposal, so that the future generations also have access to those particular resources. So that is how we go about defining sustainable development, that we should not overutilize the resources, be it your natural resources or be it your man-made resources. So the term sustainable development was first introduced in the year 1980 by the World Conservation Strategy. Since then, it started gaining traction as the years went by. The formal definition of sustainable development, which is there in the first point itself, that the development which needs the need of the future generation, present generation, without compromising the ability of the future generation to meet their own needs. This particular definition was given by the Bortland Report in the year 1987, under the guidance of Dr. John Bortland, who was then the Prime Minister of UN. It gained prominence during the year 1992 United Nations Conference on Environmental and Development, UNCED. Since then, since the year 1992, a lot of efforts have been made towards understanding sustainable development, adopting strategies or adopting activities that would help individuals as well as large organizations in doing something for the society at large. However, when we talk historically about the sustainable development, it was more focused on giving back to the society. So probably in some sort of charity, giving some sort of charity to the NGOs, making sure that the labor laws are in place, making sure that the work environment for the companies in the factory as well as in the office spaces, they are provided with a conducive environment. But John L. Kington in the year 1994 expanded on this particular concept of sustainable development and said that fine, when you're focusing on the society, that way you are correct, that you need to make sure that the people who are actually the stakeholders of your company, employees, your customers, your board of directors, and anyone within the society or within the company or outside it are your stakeholders. You're doing good for them, that is fine. Please make sure that you do not forego the environmental aspects of it. That even though you give back in some way or the other to the society, make sure that you do not jeopardize the environmental conditions which are making sure that you are able to carry out your business on a day-to-day basis. Now, environmental and social are the two main pillars as per the triple bottom line. If a company wants to do anything for the society at large, be it in environmental context or be it in the social context, it needs to have some sort of money available with itself. Money is the blood which runs through the organization and makes sure that the things are in place, that the checks and measures are in place, that the people have sufficient motivation to keep on working for the organization. Again, the company should make enough profits and should have enough money available with itself when it goes above and beyond what is there in its vision and mission statement. So that is how the concept of triple bottom line, which is your people, planet, and profit. Again, something I am borrowing from Professor Naresh. He has already talked about a lot in detail about the triple bottom line. But the concept of your triple bottom line sort of forms the basis on the which the current terminologies of ESG, CSR, sustainable development that we keep on hearing has emerged from. So it says that it is a three legs of, say, a table. If any of those legs are removed, the table will fall because there would be an imbalance in the society, imbalance within the company. So a company cannot keep on focusing on any of one of those pillars or probably just two and ignore the third aspect. In order to make sure that they sustain for a long period of time, that they are able to work in the environment they are currently working in for the people that they are currently working for, they need to keep a check of these three aspects, which are your people, planet, and profit. Now, taking into consideration the recent developments that are happening in the corporate sector, the concept of even your triple bottom line has become a bit redundant. And it says that what is the benefit that the organizations get fine. I, as an organization, I am involved. I am giving back to the society. I am erecting schools and medical institutions and giving to the charity, doing something for the orphanages and the old age homes. I am doing all of these things. I am making sure that my stakeholder relations with my suppliers and my customers are at the perfect way they should be. For the planet, I am making sure that my emissions are getting reduced. I am putting in strategies and checks and measures in place to make sure that the emissions get reduced or the emissions are not as much as they used to be. Profit, obviously, without profit, the company cannot work. But what am I gaining in that case? Profitability, one aspect. Apart from that, what am I gaining? So, in that case, a recent fourth pillar of in this in this concept of people, planet, profit has been included, which says that the major benefit that the organizations would get out of doing something for the people, the society at large, would be in terms of the reputation that they would gain in the market, which we also refer to as firm reputation or corporate reputation in layman's terms. So, reputation is nothing but your goodwill. So, whatever reputation you are able to generate, maybe not in the short term, but in the long term, definitely that is going to give you the results that you desire. So, most of the companies that are now claiming to be green companies or claiming to do a lot for the society at large and for the environmental benefits rest on the pillar of reputation. So that this is a four-pronged approach that we are now adopting. So people, planet, profit, and your reputation. Now moving from this to your ESG. So how did triple bottom, the concept of triple bottom line came to be known as your ESG, environmental, social, and governance matrix. So in the year 1980s, it started with something by the name of your sustainable development. Gradually, it started with focusing on the human health and the human well-being. It then became the three-pronged approach of your triple bottom line, also known as a sustainable development point. Then it came to be known as CSR somewhere around the year 2004 when the CSR bill was first introduced in the Indian Parliament in front of the Parliament houses. Recently, in the past one and a half decades, it has now acquired a new, acquired a new form, is known by a new form, which is your ESG. So moving over to what exactly do we understand by ESG? It is nothing but a framework which guides the company, say a company which is involved in your sustainability related activities. So it guides the company that say on your environmental front, these are the points, these are the factors which you need to look into, that you need to keep in mind. Under the social category, these are the factors that you need to keep in mind, that you need to have a look at in order to make sure that you are at par with what the industry is demanding out of the sustainability activities. And in case of governance, you need to have a very strong internal management system which will keep a check on both your environmental as well as your social aspects. If out of these three, out of your environmental, social, and governance, if I have to, this is totally my understanding and as per my knowledge, if I have to say out of these, which is the most important one, I would probably say it is governance. Because without proper leadership, without proper direction, we as an organization cannot hope to achieve the goals that we are trying to set under the environmental category or under the social category. So just to quickly summarize what are the topics that we cover under environment. So how the company manages its ecological footprint. Company consider the change of climate risk of climate change. Company invested in green technology or green practices. Does the R&D expenditure within the company? Do they give out green bonds? Do they make investments in such green technologies or not? Are the company stakeholders aware of the type of environmental initiatives which the company has adopted or not? So these are a few factors under environment. And under social, what methodologies do company use to foster the growth and development of diversity and inclusion? Is the company diverse? It is inclusive in nature. Do the employees feel valued at the company while working within the organization? Does the firm actively seek business relationship with morals and values? For instance, I have a stakeholder I have a supplier which is probably providing me almost the same quality of goods at a lower price. But the way he's procuring those raw materials to provide to the ultimate consumers might not be in a very morally idealistic way. As an organization, do I still want to continue my association with that supplier or not is a very big question. clear example of this I can give you is of Apple. So Apple has production facilities in China, right? The assembly of the mobile phone of Apple iPhones used to take place in China. The employees who were there, the workers or the laborers who were there assembling the phones, they were underage, and the conditions in which they were working were not as per the labor unions or the labor laws would allow. When Apple was questioned about their continued association with the partner who was responsible in China to carry out the assembly part of it, Apple clearly said that we are not responsible for what the partner is doing. That is their prerogative as to how they actually go about assembling the mobile phone, as long as we get the finished product with ourselves to sell across the world. So that is a clear-cut example of how companies at times forego their social constructs or forego the social factors associated with their organization, right? Then under governance, do we have the required leadership that we are looking for that will help us in guiding towards achieving our sustainability matrix or towards achieving our sustainability goals or not? So these are the few points that as an organization we need to keep in mind. And the framework of ESG helps us in looking for answers or finding answers to these possible questions. Then this is the history of ESG, which I was talking about. So in the early 1980s, it was focused more on the environmental health and safety, obviously of the workers. In 1990s, the concept of sustainability or the triple bottom line came into play. 2000 to 2010s, it has been more focused on the CSR, corporate social responsibility. And since the year 2020 or after that, it is more towards the environmental, social, and governance practices, which is in a way a culmination or a comprehensive measure of everything that has happened in the sustainability domain from the corporate sector. Right. Then talking about the scope and the concerns of ESG. So under environmental, we talk about the biodiversity laws, the climate change, the renewable energy resources which are available, green buildings, deforestation, sustainable architectures which are available, reducing pollution, improving life on water and on land. Then under social, we have diversity, inclusion, race, gender, anti-discrimination policies, the supply chain practices the company is following, the health and safety of the workers and the society at large, the data privacy concerns. Then under your governance, we have risk mitigation, the shareholder activism, as in what are the stakeholders and the shareholders in general are demanding, whether it is just dividends out of the profits which a company is earning, or saying that we will invest in the shares or the securities of your company only and only when you ensure us that there are no illegalities happening within the organization, either in the projects which are being carried out, or you're not harming the society and the environment at any rate. Then the accountability part of it, whether the managers within the organization are accountable for whatever good or bad things that are happening within the company, board independence, then your decision making and your leadership. So these are a few points. Obviously, the list is very comprehensive. We cannot cover the entire list here in this half an hour or so session. So I am trying to be as brief as possible on this, right? Then moving over to why does ESG matter? So when I was talking about the triple bottom line concept, I told that a fourth pillar of corporate reputation has been added onto it, which is nothing but a motivational factor for the organization. That yes, if you or your organization discloses more information on your environmental, social, and governance points, there are certain reputational advantages that you as an organization would enjoy. How does that reputation gets built for any organization? It is through the stakeholders that we have and the word of mouth publicity that you would hear about, say, Tata or Jio or any other company. So ESG matters. Why? Because of the different stakeholders. First being your investors. So company, this is from a Deloitte report. So companies with strong ESG approach outperform weak ESG companies by approximately 5%. Up to 5% outperformance by top 20% on material sustainability issues over bottom 20% over a period of 20 years. So in the last 20 years, the top 20% companies have outperformed the bottom 20% company by almost a change of 5%. Then your regulators, whatever regulations are being put into place are always put into place keeping in mind how much is the company ready to disclose, and what is the demand of the society at large in terms of receiving information from the organizations. So till now, over 2,300 climate-related laws and policies are already in place across the world, across the globe. Right, UK, EU, and US regulators each have certain disclosure rules which are applicable in their own regions. Right, the customer says that we will buy the products of your company, especially the the Gen Z generation, which is now talking a lot about sustainability and ESG. They say that we will buy the products of your company only and only when we see that they have been manufactured using sustainable processes. There are no adulteration, there is no unethical practices which are happening. Clear example of customers going against the company, the Patanjali case, which has come to light in the recent years, in the recent months. So Patanjali was saying that their toothpaste or any of the products which they are manufacturing is totally a green product. They are totally vegan in nature. There is no ounce of any item related to meat or dairy or any other thing in their product. When the product testing was carried out by the competent authorities, it was found that their toothpaste contained cuttlefish bones. And cuttlefish bones is obviously non-vegetarian in nature. That is why the company was penalized, and they were asked to, by the Supreme Court of India, they were asked to issue a public apology. The process is still going on. The other products of Patanjali are still again being tested for the presence or absence of any of the materials which they claim was either there or not there in their product. So again, customers not willing to buy a product. Example of this, employees, good ESG helps win competition for talent. Again, example of this, GIM by default has a lot of sustainability related measures in place across the campus. So the water that we use here within the campus, that is always recycled. So the water which is used for bathing, for brushing our teeth, for washing the dishes or washing the clothes, that is never thrown away. The entire flora that you see in and around the campus, the water that we dispose of is used to water those plants. So nothing goes waste from here. Same thing happens with the wastage that the hostels or the faculty housing produces there. So the waste is segregated first at the housing level between the dry and the wet waste. Again, we have a waste recycling plant here within the campus itself, which recycles most of the waste and uses as fodder to make sure that the plants in and around the campus are in the best of condition. So that as an employee, as a member of the society working here at GIM, that is a very big point to keep in mind. In terms of providing the skill and development, again, institutions like GIM or many other educational institutions and companies across the globe are using inclusive practices for their employees, making sure that they are getting the necessary skills and training to carry out a particular task. So they are not left in the dark as to you identify and you go ahead with acquiring the skills. We will make sure as an institution or as an organization to provide you with the necessary skill set. And then partners and suppliers. Are your vendors, are your suppliers adhering to the related sustainability norms or not? That is again a very big challenge. Then people mostly get confused when we talk about the ESG terminology. So environmental, social and governance, everyone is aware of. What about the reporting aspects of it? What about the frameworks, the standards? How do we comply with the set frameworks and standards? And again, is there any particular existing matrix against which we can identify yes that our company in belonging to say the manufacturing sector is performing at this particular level and this is our ESG score? But what about my peers and my competitors in the market? What has been their performance so far in this industry or say in this particular region, right? So I'll take you through these terminologies. So ESG reporting is nothing but the public disclosure of your sustainability related practices. So whatever sustainability related practices under the category of environmental, social and governance that you disclose in your annual reports or through any social platform, that is nothing but your ESG reporting. So the BRSR reports that the other panelists were talking about, that is nothing but a ESG report itself. Then framework is a guiding tool which helps the organizations to report the necessary information, because the organizations or the people might not know which information is relevant and should be transparently disclosed to the stakeholders and large, and which information is apparently not that relevant and we can just forego disclosing this in our annual report. So the frameworks helps the organization by guiding them that yes, this is the structure that you need to follow. These are the points that you need to keep in mind when you're disclosing your information. ESG standards work in tandem or work parallelly with the frameworks wherein they set the standards. So say for instance, when we talk under environmental disclosures saying that you have to reduce your CO2 CO2 emissions by 3%, example, right? The standard will tell you that because you are belonging to say the coal and mining industry, for that because you are in an environmentally very harmful sector, you need to reduce your carbon emissions as per the standards of this particular industry by 5%. So the 3% is applicable to probably some other sector, but in your case, the standard which you need to follow is at least reduction by 5% in your CO2 emissions. So that is how the standards work in tandem with your frameworks. ESG compliance is nothing but the frameworks and standards which have been set. Are you complying with those standards or not? This is something that we normally do in our day-to-day activities as well. So I have a day schedule for myself. There are 10 tasks which I need to achieve from 9 o'clock in the morning till say 7 o'clock in the evening. This is standard that I am setting. Am I able to complete all those 7 tasks or all those 10 tasks from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. or not? Will be my compliance factor. If I am able to achieve, say, on an average, out of the 10 tasks, if I'm able to achieve 7, that is good enough. But then my my other faculty members, if they are able to achieve, if they have a set target of 10 and they are able to achieve 9, then as per the requirements, I am performing below the standard. So I'm not exceeding the limits, or I'm not actually performing as per the limits. So that is where your compliance comes into play. ESG rating, whatever disclosures you make, depending on their relevancy and depending on the amount of information which is disclosed in those reporting measures, your ratings are provided. So there are certain institutions, certain rating agencies which provide rating and try and quantify those ESG data points which the companies generate on a day-to-day basis. So the overall score which is generated is nothing but the ESG rating for that particular company. Then these are some of the global ESG reporting frameworks which we talk about. First is the GRI framework. GRI framework is the most commonly used framework when we talk about disclosing your ESG related information, sustainability related information. So the BRSR mandate which has come into play, that is nothing but your GRI G4 guidelines. SEBI has modified these GRI guidelines to better suit the Indian companies. So that is the only modification that SEBI has made. Apart from that, the GRI guidelines have been adopted in their completeness for disclosure purposes by the corporate sector in India. Then you have Value Reporting Foundation. We have the SASB Sustainability and Accounting Standards Board. We have the Carbon Disclosure Project, which deals more with the carbon emissions and the carbon disclosures made by the firm. Then you have Task Force on Climate Related Financial Disclosures. This is one step ahead of your Carbon Disclosure Project. Given out by the same company, just a few additions have been made to the CDP and the TCFD has been given out. Then Climate Disclosure Standard Boards, your United Nations Principle for Responsible Investment. So when we talk about investing in the market which deals with your green bonds, green securities, or any projects which might help in improving the quality of your flora, fauna, or the environment in general, we talk about your principles for responsible investments. This is more from the financial perspective. Your other guidelines are more from the accounting and the reporting perspective. Then you have the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the International Sustainability Standard Goals. Now, what is happening? Because everything has financial implications associated with it. The IFRS Foundation, which gives out your guidelines, your accounting reporting standards on the basis of which companies across the globe disclose their financial information, it is merging all these, your GRI, your SASB, your CDP, your PRI, and other reporting frameworks within itself, saying that right now we are focusing only on the financial aspects of it. But because the countries year after year are implementing some sort of a mandate, some sort of a policy that the companies also need to disclose their sustainability related information, we will provide a comprehensive picture which will cover both your financial and the non-financial information. That is the actual numbers, the profitability figures, the market valuations and everything, along with your non-financial or sustainability related disclosures as well. Then this is just a bifurcation to show you what exactly, who exactly are the regulators in the market related to ESG information, the different frameworks which I was talking about in the last slide, and then the standards. So SSB and GRI are more like the standards, and then your integrated reporting, CDSB and TCFD are the frameworks which are followed. Who give out these frameworks are your regulators. So your European Union, your Non-Financial Reporting Directive, NFRD, and now IFRS has also been included under your regional regulators. Then moving over to the advantages of ESG, improved reputation, as I was talking about, that is the fourth pillar which has been added to the concept of triple bottom line. Attractive to the investors because they are a major player in the market, and the company's ability to stay in the market or to carry out its business in the market depends a lot on what the investors are actually looking for. So one of the advantages is that the more sustainability related disclosures you will made in your books of account, in your annual reports, the more the investors would be interested in approaching your firm for investment purposes. Gaining a competitive advantage, obviously, from the strategic point of view, if you are disclosing more than what your peers are disclosing, or if your ESG score is higher than their overall score, you get a competitive advantage by default because you will have a better reputation and better investors would come and invest in your company. Then improved performance not only in terms of your financial capabilities, but your in terms of your employees working well, in terms of your investors being more in terms of your customers approaching you more for purchasing your goods and services. Then resilient and sustainable and capacity building. Capacity building because ESG, the more ESG disclosures you make, the more knowledge, the more expertise you will require in this particular domain. So that will help in building the capacity of your existing employee as well as the workforce which is ready to join the corporate sector in the next few years. Then coming over to the disadvantages. So every policy or every aspect which we see, not only in the corporate sector, in the government sector, in the educational institutions, everything has two sides of the coin. So one has to be your advantages, so the merits of adopting ESG practices. The other would be your disadvantages. Non-mandatory is more applicable when we talk about your CSR expenditure. So there are certain criteria which the company needs to fulfill in order to be able to allocate 2% of its profit after taxation for your CSR expenditure. That since the year 2013, when it was actually implemented and the CSR expenditures started coming out of from the companies from the year 2015, that is, it has still not been mandated. The BRSR reporting has now been mandated for top 1000 companies, and the BRSR 4 is only for the top 100 companies, which will become 250, 500, so on and so forth in the coming years. But as of now, a majority of the listed and the non-listed company still do not follow within the scope of your ESG disclosures and your BRSR reporting. So that is how it is non-mandatory till now. Greenwashing, the example of Patanjali, which I was giving you, clear example of greenwashing. That you're claiming to be green, you're claiming to be involved in sustainability activities or being sustainable and using the means and measures to manufacture goods in a very holistic manner. But actually that is not happening. the scenes behind the curtain are very different. No uniform standard. India is the only nation which has mandated the top 1000 companies to go by their BRSR report, which is based on your GRI G4 guidelines. Across the world, if you see at the sustainability related disclosures of different companies, some might be following GRR, some might be following disclosures or the list of disclosures given out by their own firms or their own organization. So there is no standardization or there is no universally accepted standard when we talk about your disclosures of ESG performance. Then obviously it is expensive. Till now, the companies were focused only and only on disclosing their financial information because they were under the impression that the higher profits they would show, the better market valuation that they would show in their books of accounts, uh, the better investors would be there. The taking capital or raising capital from the market would be easier. They would get money easily from the financial institutions. Then the concept of sustainability came into play, and they're like, how are we now supposed to cope up with this? Because till now, most of the companies have not been able to manage their finances. Now you are saying that we have to manage the non-financial performance as well. How should we go about it? You have to allocate some sort of financial and non-financial resources to make sure that your ESG, you are complying with the ESG factors as well. So that is how it becomes expensive. So only the top firms which have a lot of resources available at financial resources available at their disposal are probably able to give out their ESG disclosures in the required format and in the are good with complying with the rules set by their regulators, right? Then regulations constantly changing. CSR came into play. Before that, some other measures were adopted. ESG is the talk of the town these days. What would happen 10 years down the line? So till we do not have a strict regulation in place that will say that yes, these are the only and only measures that you need to follow. There are no other things that you need to take into consideration while disclosing a sustainability information. There would always be disparity from one company to the other company as to what are we supposed to disclose. Then complex, requiring specialized expertise. Because this is a growing field, there are not a lot of individuals available in the market who have the necessary capabilities to deal with the ESG related data. Because it is gaining traction, more certification programs are coming out, more institutions are now providing especially designed programs related to ESG and sustainability reporting. But yes, again, that is a very specialized field, right? Then, okay, so this was all about the ESG, which I was initially talking about. How does ESG relate to sustainable development? That is something I've already pointed out in my earlier slides. Now, another aspect of achieving sustainable development or holistic development for the society at large is through your sustainable development goals, which were identified. So the 17 goals which are identified, how does ESG relate to that? Is this. So the 17 goals are no poverty, zero hunger, good health, quality education, gender equality, clean water, sanitation, affordable energy, decent work, industry innovation. These are all the 17 goals which are there. Fitting as per your company's performance, as per your company's vision and mission, the environmental, social, and governance disclosures in these 17 goals to make sure that the corporate sector is contributing equally towards achieving these SDGs is a major challenge. So what the companies right now are doing, they are focusing on their own sustainability performances. They are disclosing the necessary information that is mandated by the regulators, that is mandated by the law to be disclosed, but they are losing focus on achieving the overall sustainable development goals, wherein they need to align their policies and their strategies to make sure that yes, these are the disclosures that we need to make sure that we gain the competitive advantages or we are able to reap the benefits and the rewards that comes with disclosing the ESG information. But what about the economy as a whole? What about the nation as the whole? Are we able to achieve these sustainable development goals or not? So these asterisks which you can see marks which sustainable development goal is relevant in or is related to which pillar of ESG. Is it social, is it environmental, or is it governance? So for instance, your peace and justice and strong institution is related both to your social disclosure factors and your governance. Peace and justice has got nothing to do with environmental planning or environmental strategy. Same way, responsible consumption and production, which is your SDG 12, is related to all the three. So production and consumption, you obviously procure your raw materials from somewhere, you manufacture it, and then you sell it to the final end consumers. So all the three pillars of ESG come into play in that case. Right. So this is the matrix which helps you in identifying as to how the companies can align their individual objectives with the overall achievement or your developmental goals. Then these are a few statistics related to your SDGs and which nations have been able to perform better when it comes to achieving their SDG goals. So Finland is the highest ranked country across the world with a score of 86.76. Croatia is at number 12, which is 81.50. USA, United States of America, ranks 39 with a score of 75.91, and India ranks at 112. So as compared to Finland, which is at 86.76, India is just scoring 63.45, which shows that we are a long way to achieving our sustainable development goals. And if the corporate sector plans to contribute holistically towards achievement of this SDGs, we have to make sure that we buck up and we align the individual with the goals of the individual organizations with the overall objective of achieving these SDGs. Okay, this is again the state-wise performance of the 29 states in India, out of which Kerala is the highest in terms of achieving its sustainable development goals, which is at 75. Then we have Tamil Nadu, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Goa, and Karnataka. So from Andhra Pradesh to Karnataka is at 72. Tamil Nadu and Himachal Pradesh are at 74 each. So these are the top 7 states in terms of achieving their sustainability performances. For the bottom states, the scores are not very high. So the bottommost state in that case is Bihar. Just above Bihar, we have Jharkhand. Above that, we have Assam, Uttar Pradesh, Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, and Rajasthan. So Bihar is the least performing state with a score of only 52 in achieving its sustainable development goals. Again, in case of the individual states achieving the sustainable development goal will lead to, again, India performing better when it comes to achieving their SDG targets. And if these are about the states, when we talk about the union territories, which are Chandigarh and Puducherry. So out of the union territories that we have, Chandigarh and Puducherry are the highest scored states in that case, with the Chandigarh at 79 and Puducherry at 68. So whatever discussion that we have had today, what Professor Naresh was talking about, and then what the other guest speakers were also talking about, Dr. Pradeep and Mr. Sagar was talking about, the ultimate conclusion in that case is that if we try and achieve the goals individually, we might not be able to go on for a very long period of time. We need to show cumulative efforts in order to make sure that the targets that we are setting, maybe for the organization, maybe for the individual self-satisfaction, they're always aligned with the overall bigger picture and overall achieving the bigger goals in life. So that is my summation for the entire presentation which I was giving. So thank you so much. And if there are any questions.
Thank you, ma'am, for this detailed presentation. And there were questions related to the scoring, but you have already mentioned at the end of this address. However, I have noticed 2 questions. This question is, one question is ESG and CSR same? Is ESG part of CSR? What is the difference? So I think they just want to quickly understand the difference between ESG and CSR.
Okay. Okay. So ESG does not fall under the category of CSR. It is the other way around. So CSR is nothing but your corporate social responsibility. So the 3 pillars in ESG that we have, which are your environmental, social, and governance. So CSR is nothing but the social pillar under your ESG. So the expenditure that the companies makes towards achieving their achieving their social goals is categorized as your CSR expenditure. So the overall expenditure could be related to the three categories of environmental, social, and governance. But for the sake of reporting it in our annual reports and for the sake of showing it in the expenses of your income statement, we show it as your CSR expenditure. So that is how we differ between CSR and ESG.
I think this is a good explanation, ma'am. And okay, other one question I want to take here: how do I know if a company uses ESG? How to find out? I think they want to understand which is the website in which the ratings are there.
Okay, so Niti Aayog is one website. On the website of Niti Aayog, you can find the individual companies and their information. Otherwise, the annual report is the go-to place. So you pick up the annual report of any company, and now because the BRSR has been mandated, there is another section on business business reporting and sustainability reporting by default in the annual report. So whatever ESG and CSR related information that you might be probably be looking for, it will be there in the annual reports of the company.
So I have got, ma'am, two emails from participants for the presentation. So I think it will be best if you share me your presentation. And also this is for Abhishek sir. I think because of their quick referral, or maybe they want to share it to the other stakeholders to understand. I think this will be the best way to pass the knowledge, because it was very comprehensive addresses which you all have given. And we thank you, Sir Abhishek sir and Achal ma'am. We also want to thank Dr. Pradeep sir Mukadam, who has shown his presence, because he's a very busy person and he holds entirely charges of government. So I'm very thankful to Dr. Pradeep sir. I'm very thankful to GIM and CASA. I'm thankful to Divya ma'am, who is the chairperson of GIM CASA, and Ajit Parulekar sir for associating with us in this knowledge series. And I think this is just a beginning in which we are trying to spread the knowledge of climate change, ESG, or sustainability, or SDGs. So I think we need to do such kind of awareness programs. And I'm happy this is being recorded, because we want to spread it across many stakeholders who could not join this session. So once again, thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for your perspectives and your insightful sessions. So I think we will end this session. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Darshna. Thank you for the nice platform
Thank you so much,
and that
Darshana ji.
guidance.
Thank you. Thank you.